Hey, good day, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of Pirkei Avos, the Ethics of the Fathers, live from Israel with Rabbi Chaim Coffman. He's just been sharing with me some exciting news, everything he's working on, and we wish him well because we know he's always pouring out the love and light of Torah to us, and it means a lot, and his success, means a lot to me. I really want to encourage everybody to support him in his ventures. He encourages everybody he comes in contact with. It's just great to see people's lives, move into a stage of fulfillment. So without any delay, let's see. I'm not sure if we're still holding in chapter 2, Mishnah 6, part 22 or something. I can't recall, Rabbi, but it's always good to be with you. How are you today? You're live on the air, Rabbi. I'm going to turn it right over to you. I just want to give a shout out to Nina down in Brazil there. Tuned in.
Always a pleasure to be here. We are in chapter 2, Mishnah 6, actually part 16. I don't think we're going to get to part 20. Part 16 looks like 100% it should be the end. It should be the end of this Mishnah, but again, you never know. You get me started and we may not finish, right? That is just part of the reality of what goes on, with the Mishnah in general, because again, there's obviously
veins of gold, sure.
There's always a lot to speak about. There's it's never a shortage. Certainly. And we spoke last week, since I didn't give last Saturday night, since I was away. We spoke about anyone excessively occupied in business, right? Certainly, we mentioned cannot be a Torah scholar. Why? Because we said there's a difference between somebody occupied in business and somebody who works, right? We saw that there's a difference. What's the difference? Somebody works, okay, there are certain times they don't work. And if they don't work, so they're only allowed to work if that is the only way they can put money on the table. Otherwise, if they're not working, they have to learn, right? So, but somebody's occupied in business. That means every last second, that's what they're doing. And therefore, they're never going to have time to learn. But somebody who works in general, they should have time, right? Should have time either early in the morning, at night. They're not their whole being.
If you don't make it, it'll never
not
be
about,
there.
Yeah.
The hamster wheel runs away with
money
you.
On the table and, and certainly getting carried away. I mentioned, years ago, if we Orthodox Jews would put as much time into learning, as Bill Gates would be into money, and making money, we would have been Torah giants, a long time ago. And the blessing we make in the morning, right, just to recapitulate, we wake up in the morning, we make the blessing, Lasok b'divrei Torah. We say God is King of the world. That we have an obligation to be what we call Osek b'Torah, right? Osek b'Torah is not the same as Lilmod Torah. Lilmod Torah means to learn Torah. So why don't I say the blessing that I should learn Torah? Simple explanation, because Osek means like a business, right? In other words, I have to be involved in Torah like I would be a business. Right. Therefore, every last second I'm involved in my business, trying to make money, trying to expand, all these things. I should be doing that in Torah. Right. I should be learning Torah when I don't, when I have no more strength left. Right. That's my obligation. That's what I should be doing. But again, we're lazy. Maybe we only learn, the time that we're supposed to learn. Right. That's what my Rebbe says distinguishes, rabbis from rabbis, so to speak, because they learn when other people don't learn. Let's say late at night, they learn on Fridays, they learn on, they learn before Shabbos, they learn before holidays. But again, it's a major difference between the idea of learning Torah and the idea of being occupied, learning business or doing business rather than being occupied in business. Because the Mishnah over here says, if you do that, you will not become a scholar.
Yeah.
Right? That is, you want to call it a curse. I don't know what you want to call it.
It's a statement telling you
this will never happen. Yeah. Right? In other words, someone who's working, 12, 14 hours a day, when can they learn?
Yes.
I'm not saying at the time you start a business, or something like that, we have to put in more effort, you have to put in more time. That's true. That's 100% true. But most people don't have to do that, especially if they're salaried. And even if they're salaried, right? Some people, okay, you work 8 hours, 9 hours, maybe a person works 10 hours, but still, you got to find time to learn, right? If you're a guy, you have to find time to learn. But if you're occupied 100% of the time in business, no time for family, no time for fun, no time, well, fun's a relative term, right? No time for any of these things, then you will not become a scholar. So we mentioned off the year, I'll just mention I was up north. I'll give this pitch at the end, right? But I think one of the things I should have done for the brochure is got a picture of me on a banana boat. Banana boating is fun. That you go up to Sea of Galilee they have here, and they have like a raft. It's like a huge raft. It looks like a banana, right? It looks exactly like a banana, and you have like 10 handles, right, for people to sit there and hold on while you're being dragged, by a motorboat. So you go flying up in the air. Some people fall off, but obviously you have life jackets on. So it's whatever. Like I said, it was an action shot. Too bad. I didn't get a picture of it. My arms were tied for a couple of days only because I was like holding on for dear life. But in any case, I digress here. But it was fun. It was very quite enjoyable. We'll speak about that, I guess, at the end about all that. So the last part of the Mishnah of Mishnah 6, which probably we're going to finish. Now, I shouldn't say probably, famous last words. What's the last part of the Mishnah say? The last part of the Mishnah says, in a place where there are no leaders, you have to strive to become a leader. Right? Now,
excellent.
There's an obvious question. Right? There's an obvious question. The obvious question is, okay, what does that mean? Right? If there are no leaders, let's say someone doesn't have the qualities to be a leader, right? They can't step up to the plate. Let's say, by the way, speaking of stepping up to the plate, I was at a good friend of mine married off his oldest daughter, which was actually a tremendous joy. She was, she was 26. No, she's older than that. I think 27, year older than my oldest daughter. Anyway, so in our circle, that's, it's late, to get married, and it was a tremendous thing. And Wednesday, so there's 7 festive meals you have, after a person gets married. So we had it near where I live, and we, split it up with a bunch of other families. Anyway, a bunch of people got up to speak, and I also got up to speak. And one of the things we said was, a friend of mine, grew up in Silver Spring, Maryland. Obviously they were Redskins fans. So, made a joke at the wedding. Made a joke and said, okay, we had some yeshiva students there, Americans, so it was good for them also. Right, major trivia question. What's the only national football team doesn't have a real name? The Washington football team. Why? You can't say they're Redskins. That's a terrible thing. The whole thing about the Cleveland Indians. Okay, we're not going to go there, right? So then I said, have this good friend of mine, living in the prairies. And I said, if you can't make it to the NFL, where do you go? You go to the CFL. So we had a nice, nice joke about that. No one had any idea what I was talking about, but, a few people did understand. Anyway, the point is, let's not digress here. What does it mean there are no leaders who strive to be a leader? Not everybody has the quality to be a leader. We know that you could have great rabbinic scholars, and we saw this before talking about teachers, right? You can't be impatient, right? A bashful person can't learn. So someone who teaches, we spoke ad nauseum probably about the problems and the pitfalls about being a teacher, getting angry, all these things. But again, you can have people with tremendous amount of knowledge, and even though they have a tremendous amount of knowledge, does not mean they have the ability to teach. Right. Or they give it over at such a high level, no one understands it, which is a waste of time anyway. Mm-hmm. Right. In general, I've heard some people say, I give this class and whatever. And I really, give it to them. I said, well, how many people really understand it? If you're giving it at such a high level, right? Giving it at such a high level is good if people get it. It doesn't mean you have to explain everything. You have to let people think for themselves also. But at the same time, you got to give it over in a way people are going to understand. So I would say the same thing. If you want to tell me there are no leaders, so you say, okay, I'm going to step up to the plate. Right? That's how we get on to the CFL and the Washington National Football Team. Right? So you're going to say, okay, I want to step up to the plate. So the question is, do you have the character traits in order to be a leader? Are you just a follower, or are you able to raise people up to a higher level to help, to give over, whatever? Do you have those qualities or not? Now, most people probably know if they do or don't. This is not, I don't think this is rocket science. If someone is normally bashful, doesn't necessarily mean that, that they're going to be a leader. Now, there is a story, the famous story, that there was somebody at the Western Wall, right, that would pluck people off and ask if they wanted to go to yeshiva, right, with Mayor Schuster, of blessed memory, and he would just go up to people and ask them, are you Jewish? Are you interested in learning? And, etc. And this person, why do I mention him? Because he sent hundreds, thousands of people, men, women, to yeshivas, to girls' schools. Eventually, that was their start out in, Judaism. And this person was afraid to speak to people. He was a tremendous introvert. Now, in general, someone who's a tremendous introvert, right? Myself included, most people probably think, oh, that's an outgoing person. You can never be an introvert. Probably not. I'm just kidding, right? But in general, someone who's an introvert is not going to be able to do that because they're going to be afraid to speak to people. They're going to be afraid maybe they'll say something, rejection, any number of things. He was known. He said on himself. He was, tremendously introverted. The last thing you would have thought is somebody like him tapping people on the shoulder, asking them if they're interested in learning, or going to yeshiva and all that. But obviously he was able to overcome that. Why? Because he saw a higher purpose, right? He was saving souls, right? So to speak, sounds like a Christian thing. I was saving souls, right? He was saving souls. That's what he did. That's exactly what he did. But for someone to be an introvert, how can you do that, right? Same thing over here. How can someone be a leader if they don't have the qualities to be a leader? Now, does that mean a person cannot be taught? Doesn't mean that, right? Absolutely does not mean that. What it means is that you have to, see if you have the qualities or if you can acquire, those qualities. So one explanation, so that's what I would say without knowing anything. In order to be a leader, you really have to be a leader. And again, people from a young age, they stand out. Leaders stand out more than other people. It's clear, right? You see how they act, you see how they carry themselves, even at a relatively young age. You see it on the ball field, you see it scholastically, etc. So that's what I would say, my own opinion, that's what I would say simple explanation is. So now let's see what some of the commentaries say. So one explanation is that if you're telling me someone's going to be a leader, right, if there's no place where there's a leader, you got to step up. What does that mean? It means that someone who's ready to be a leader, we're talking about someone who has requisite knowledge to give halachic decisions. Right? In other words, you got to be qualified to do so. But if there's no one else willing to take a stand and someone knows to do it in that situation, then they should be ready to be a leader. Now, what's the obvious example? Obvious example, which I'll get in trouble for, but that's okay, even though it's not controversial issues. The obvious example is none other than Pinchas. We look at what Pinchas did, right? We have Zimri and, this woman that he's with doing the jitterbug. We're going to keep this PG-13, right? Are we live on Roku?
No, not today. No,
okay,
I
so
have
if we're
better
not live, I
control
can
with
say what I
this,
want.
restream.
But we're going to try and make it PG-13 anyway. So what did he do? They were busy being immoral in front of everyone. Pinchas runs to Moshe Rabbeinu, right? And he runs to Moshe Rabbeinu and he asks him, what's the halacha? What do you do in such a situation? Moshe Rabbeinu, one of the few laws that he forgot. Moshe Rabbeinu forgot what to do. Pinchas says, oh, I remember what the halacha is. Gets out his spear. And while they're in the middle, he kills them, right? In my language, he shish kebabs them, right? He takes a spear, kills them, right? right in the heat of passion. Great way to end a good romance. Kills them. Right? So now the obvious question is that Pinchas killed Zimri. He's the head of a tribe. Now, if Zimri would have tried to kill him and he would have killed him, let's say, so Pinchas had the status of a rodef. A rodef means a pursuer, right? Someone's coming to pursue you, you kill them, you stop them, you do whatever you can, But someone who has that status, you can kill him, right? There's nothing to talk about. You'll be allowed to kill him. Now, Pinchas, after doing what he did, what does God say? He made the covenant of peace, right? So this is another major question, right? One day I'm only holding by the book of Leviticus, chapter 15. I actually finished chapter 14 last week after more than 30 classes, right? So you're going to say, wow, we're only on part 16. You're right. So I gave a class for 2 hours or more for 30 weeks. 30 weeks, 31 weeks. It was actually more than that. It was like 32, 33. It's like 66 hours of classes on one chapter. We'll see what happens in chapter 15, right? But in general, so I was going to say, so who knows when we get to Parshas Pinchas, right? That's in the next book. We're only in Leviticus chapter 15, right? So what does the Torah tell me? Torah says, you know what? By Pinchas, God says, thank God, thank God he assuaged my anger. He got rid of my anger, right? By getting rid of my anger, I wiped out, that they were wiped out. Now, not only that, he's made a priest, right? He comes from the line of Aaron the Cohen. So you have to ask the question, he killed them in broad daylight, shish kebab them in my language. If he shish kebab them, what's the covenant of peace? Why is that a covenant of peace? But that's not really the question. The question is, why was Pinchas not the next leader after Moshe Rabbeinu? We understand Pinchas is a Gilgal, reincarnated soul of Elijah the prophet. Right now, he was on a very high level. And what Pinchas did, I should have clarified, that if he would have had any smidgen, I don't even know if that's a word, any smidgen of hatred towards Zimri whatsoever, then he's not allowed to do what he did. Right? In other words, he had to do it 100%, for the sake of heaven. Because most people look at that parsha, they say, he's a vigilante. Right? They have to watch my video on YouTube on Parshas Pinchas. It is called, being a vigilante. Right? Pinchas is a vigilante or not. Right? So I have a video over there. Point is, people look at him like a fanatic. A zealot, right? He's called a zealot. He's a zealot for Hashem. He's a zealot for God. But if he had any other ulterior motive, he doesn't like non-Jews, right? He doesn't like non-Jewish princesses. He doesn't like, he didn't like Zimri. Maybe he had B.O. Who knows? Maybe something about him. Maybe he had a unibrow. Maybe he had a unibrow. He didn't like his unibrow. I don't know. Maybe he's a little more feminine. Who knows? Some reason he didn't like him. I'm not going to digress here. Point is that if he would have done that for any ulterior motive, he's not allowed to. It had to be done 100% for the sake of heaven. Right? So over here, the person ready to be a leader has to know what to paskin. They have to know how to give over Jewish law. Now, what if somebody, I've heard this before, some people say, well, if you even know a little bit, you should be able to teach others. Even if you know a little bit. Right? I've heard this said a number of times.
I should be able to share what you do have.
I've heard this said a number of times where somebody has minimal knowledge. When I mean minimal, I mean minimal. Right? But other people will say, even if you have minimal knowledge, you could still give over to others. You could still teach that to others. What's the obvious question? What do they do if they ask you a question you can't answer? So why are you giving over information? If you don't necessarily know what you're talking about. So I'll tell you the following story, because I know you had a question before. I'll tell you the following story. I saw somebody make a video. Somebody made a video, and is a non-Jew, I guess in the process of conversion, let's say. And at the very beginning of the video, he's quoting Hebrew words, which he's butchering every single Hebrew word. In other words, anyone who knows anything would see that he's butchering every Hebrew word. But that's okay. right? The context was worse. Because he quotes the Shulchan Aruch, quotes the code of Jewish law, and he makes a statement. And from that statement, he says, this is the halacha. Now, if you know how to learn, you look at what the code of Jewish law says, very good. Then you have to see what the commentaries say. Why? Because according to that statement, right, what was the statement? I'll just throw it out there. I'm not going to get sidetracked here and go to the whole thing. I'll just mention one thing. What does the code of Jewish law say? Code of Jewish law says any woman, single or married, Jewish, have to cover their hair. That's the statement. Now, obviously, it's talking about a very specific case. Because if anyone's ever lived in a Jewish community, which this bozo never has, if you lived in a Jewish community, you would know there are no single girls covering their hair. Now, it could be in Yemen that was the case to stab them off from Arabs, from Muslims. Okay, that was a different issue because then they saw they were married, they wouldn't touch them. Let's say because they were so quote unquote holy, right? But in every other Jewish community I've ever been a part of, no single woman covers her hair. Let's make clear. Doesn't happen. Doesn't exist. So this guy's giving over class in Jewish law. So he's reading over, which I can do also, in Hebrew, and he's translating, but butchering every Hebrew word. And he's telling the statement, this is the case. Now, how do I know this? Because one of my students showed me this, and he says it's really true. And I looked it up, right? What he said was true. According to the code of Jewish law, the Shulchan Aruch says that single and married women have to cover their hair. Very good. But how many single women cover their hair today? Is he going to say, what? We don't hold like the code of Jewish law and everything? Depends. Right? Depends what the commentaries say. Depends how we understand it. There could be differences in what the Shulchan Aruch brings down, what other commentaries say. Okay, but you have to learn it in context. Now, even without looking at the other commentaries, right? In general, without looking at them, I would say, based on the fact that I've lived in a Jewish community, a number of Jewish communities around the world, right? All of them Orthodox. No single woman have I ever seen, unless they're playing to be like married women, are covering their hairs in public. Covering their hair in public. Nobody. Right? So now, why do I mention this? Because this guy, wants to show what he knows. Maybe he's going to step up and try and be a leader. Do not give over information if you don't know what you're talking about. Right? It's good. He wants to make videos. I think he's wasting his time, making videos and then calling out every heretic who's out there. Okay, you can also do that. But the point is, why aren't you learning? Obviously, you can't read Hebrew properly. If you can't read Hebrew properly, then why are you making a video and quoting Hebrew? But not only that, if you're going to quote the code of Jewish law, see, I know you don't know how to read Hebrew. I know you don't understand Hebrew. And if you don't understand Hebrew, how do you know what it says? How do you know what the commentaries say over here? But not even that. I'm not even going that far. All you have to do is live in a Jewish community. Live in a Jewish community for a week, then get back to me. Right? Then come back to me, tell me, see? Single women cover their hair. Show me. Right? I'm always big in getting people to show me information. Right? Don't talk a big game. Don't open your big mouth. Show me the facts. And if you can't show me the fact, you shut your big fat trap. See, I'm not even drinking, just decaffeinated tea over. It's probably a little bit caffeinated. But one of my pet peeves is I can't stand people that talk a big game and they don't know anything. Right? Go back in the hole that you crawled out of. Go learn Hebrew properly, and then when you're a big rabbinic scholar, tell me what the commentaries say over here. And you know why you're not going to be able to do that? Because you can't read it. Right? So over here, you have to be, so you want to be a leader. You want to show you're a big shot. You want to show you want to save the Jewish people. You want to go out and do that. That's great. That is a tremendous thing. But you have to know what the heck you're doing. You can't make a video about Jewish law and not know what it says. Right? And forget not knowing what it says. You don't even know what's going on in Jewish communities because you never lived in one. That makes you look like a fool, right? It makes you look like an absolute fool, right? Now, if there's no one else to take a stand, that's the point here, and someone knows what to do in that situation, we spoke about Pinchas, then you should be ready to be a leader. But that means you have to be under the wings of someone who knows what's going on. So if you're doing it on your own, my Rebbe says this many, many times. Person goes out to do Jewish outreach, which I'm going to start doing soon. We're going to speak about that at the end. So you got to stay till the end, another good hour before we tell you what it's all about. But that being the case, as my Rebbe says, if you're doing outreach, you have to have a Rebbe to ask questions from. In other words, not everything are you allowed to do for the sake of outreach. You're going to tell me it's saving souls, right? Potentially saving souls, right? Jews and non-Jews, whether they convert or not, doesn't matter. But you're helping them. You're giving them direction. That's a tremendous thing. But you know what? There are guidelines. And a person has to follow the guidelines. And I saw this when I was in Chile. You had a bunch of bozos there doing things, certainly not according to Jewish law, right? So bad, that whatever. It was so problematic. Very clear this person, certainly one of them certainly hadn't learned properly. There's no question. But it's kiruv. It's doing Jewish outreach. It's permissible. Who says? Give you an example. I'll give this bozo an example. Right? What does he do? Comes porn. So there were yeshiva guys who were learning in Baltimore and the Ner Yisrael Yeshiva, right? Very famous yeshiva in Baltimore. They come back before Passover. So what does this bozo rabbi do? I don't want to call him rabbi. Right? What does this bozo do? He's having a porn party, which is fine. He's having a porn party in a bar, right? Which is, I'll say maybe it's a little bit dodgy. But okay, I understand it's for the sake of outreach. So he's got men there, women there, whatever. So what does he do? So he tells these yeshiva students, I want you to come and strengthen the place. I want you now let's think how absurd this is. Right? He's telling these yeshiva guys that I want you to come to make it, a more Torah atmosphere. Not like they're just coming to a pub to party and we're having a little bit Jewish things. Now, obviously, certainly a woman also, they have to watch their eyes. They have to guard their thoughts. Guy's been learning day and night in Baltimore, right? You're going to tell him, okay, I want you to help strengthen this porn party. So one of the rabbis out there says, if your rabbi says that this is permitted, I will print this up, get it in writing. I will put it on the front door as big as I can make it on the front door of my synagogue. That is absurd. Now, what's the mentality? Right, just to give him a little, bit of a break over here. What's the mentality? The mentality to say, listen, it's doing Jewish outreach. You got men and women together. You're right. Okay, that's not the best thing to do. But if you have men and women together, so I'll take these yeshiva students, I'll make it a stronger atmosphere. I'll make it a better atmosphere. But what's the reality? The reality is they're going to be brought down more than they're going to bring the other people up. Mm-hmm. No question. You have alcohol flowing, men and women together, bad news, right? We know what potentially could happen. So how could a person do that?
Breeding ground, yeah.
Exactly. So how could the person do it? What would be the mentality? The mentality would be that it's strengthening the place and it's for kiruv, it should be permissible. So this other rabbi says, show me. Who says such a thing? Who allows such a thing? You show me a rabbi that allows it, put it in writing. I'll put it on my door. I'll put it on the door of my synagogue. That person's a fraud. A major fraud. I mean, you want to bring yeshiva students to a mixed party? You got to be out of your mind. Who's going to permit such a thing? You got this bozo in Florida, right? In Boca. Just while I'm on this topic, right? He's going to bring a 3rd tier, 4th tier, 5th tier missionary come speak to a synagogue. Motivational speaker, right? Thank God people complained. He didn't do it. The speaker backed down. This rabbi didn't back down. He thought it was a desecration of God's name because they came out against it. And the federation's willing to pay him $50,000, $50,000 for the 2nd tier, missionary to give a motivational speech. There aren't any great Jewish speakers out there that you can get to speak. Plenty of them. They'll take 1/3 of the money, not even. Right? Take a lot less. But this guy even went further. He brought in Dr. Ruth. Ruth. Everyone knows Dr. Ruth is a sex therapist. What are you bringing her in a modern Orthodox synagogue? I don't, so when I made that video what's bogus in Boca Raton is an 8-minute diatribe, just me yelling and screaming. My famous quote was, I wouldn't have let her speak out of a toilet in my synagogue, right? In my outreach center, I'm trying to bring, trying to build up north. You really think I'm going to have a sex therapist try and bring people in? You got to be out of your mind. You got to be absolutely out of your cotton picking head. So why is the person, why is that okay? Why in the world is that okay? What rabbinical authority says it's okay, to do such a thing? So over here, you want to be a leader. You want to show that you're a leader. You got to be qualified. You can't say, well, we're going to bring people in. Maybe we're going to bring in people that never stepped foot in before. Bring up the membership. I don't know. Why don't you bring, Hooter dancers? Why don't you bring in who knows what? Bring in other people. I mean, why call it a synagogue if you're going to do that? You're going to say, okay, that's extreme. You bring in a sex therapist. That's not extreme. That's not extreme at all, right? You got to be qualified. Now, would it be better somebody like that? There's no one else to stand up. You want somebody like that standing up? I don't think so, right? I definitely don't think so. So if there's no one else around, you need someone to step up. Even if they don't know 100% what they're doing, they have to get guidance, right? Sometimes people need to stand up even if no one's going to listen, but you need someone to stand up even if they're not necessarily so qualified. So people say, oh, why should we listen to him? Well, who else is taking a stand? Who else is saying this is forbidden? And it might cost you in other ways, true? Right? Definitely might cost you in other ways. Even if it does, isn't it better you stand up against the desecration of God's name than just let it go? Right? My Rebbe's made protests here in Israel many, many times. And I once asked him, really think it did anything? And he said, I don't want to get upstairs after 120 years. And God's going to say, hey, Moshe, how come you didn't protest? How come you didn't say anything? And what would be the answer? Even if I would have, who's going to listen? Right? Who's going to listen? So if you're in the palace of the king, certain things are going on, and no one's saying anything, even if no one's going to listen, doesn't matter. Because then God says, you know what? This person really cares. This person's really interested in truth. This person wants the right thing. Doesn't matter who comes on the other side. Doesn't matter anybody listens or not. But the fact is, sometimes you got to stand up, even if no one's going to listen. So you had a question before?
Well, yeah. I mean, because you broke down one should not teach unless he's fluent in Jewish law. How does this relate to B'nai Noach? I mean, I realize that in the same vein, I mean, they should know what they're discussing or talking about. And I've been at this for a number of years, and I've had some schools just seems some certain schools just seem to get a hate on for me just because I'm not from their school, and I always try to be of that opinion that. I try to encourage people to flourish into their full potential, and if they have the ability to be leaders, why shouldn't they strive for it and work into it? Especially, I mean, we see communities are just not even developed yet, and you wanna fan the flames wherever they are. But I mean,
right,
what should a B'nai Noach be fluent in?
So you're making a good point, and this is something that one of my other projects working on with Noahide nations as well, and that is training Noahides to train others in their community. That's how you build up communities, right? You're not going to have rabbis dealing with Noahides in general, because most rabbis don't want to deal with non-Jews, right? You got cooties, right? Spiritual cooties or whatever, right? But in general, what's the problem? Problem is you need leaders. You need non-Jewish leaders in order to teach non-Jews. Now, obviously, you need them to be under the guidance of rabbis, there's no question. Right? But in the Noahide world, that's what we're training people for. That's why there's a course training Noahides in order to be teachers for their own communities. Now, if I could clone myself, which God would probably be very upset, if I could clone myself, I'd go to all these different communities doing that, right? Training people, giving classes, giving strength, this, that, right? I mean, it's on the agenda. It's, question, how it gets done and whatever. But, that's the plan, because the only way you're going to build Noahide communities is with Noahides. They have to be in the community. The problem is there are Noahides in every community. They're all spread out, etc. But you need leaders, right?
Yes,
you certainly
but
need
no
non-Jewish
titles, right?
leaders.
No titles, yeah.
You need non-Jewish leaders in order to give over to non-Jews. But these non-Jewish leaders have to be trained by rabbis. They're not going to figure this out. Certainly not going to figure this out on their own. That's why I gave a class on Derech Hashem, which sounds kind of strange. The way of God that speaks about why God created the world, purpose of man, how the spiritual world works, reincarnation, the evil inclination, versus the good inclination, what the purpose of the nations are, etc. This was a crucial thing, giving over Jewish philosophy. It was a lot of Kabbalah, no question, but giving over Jewish philosophy to non-Jews in order that they should be able to train. Other non-Jews, which I think our goal is in October, after the holidays, after the high holy days and Sukkot. The interim goal is to start teaching this class again, training Noahides, in being a Noahide, right? And that's something that I'm going to do with Noahide Nation. It's going to be once a week for an hour. We're not going to do it for 2 hours. That was a little bit hard when I did my other course. And eventually doing duties of the heart in the gate of bitachon and faith and belief in God. I'm going to do that another time also. But they're going to start a new cycle of people learning, the Noahide laws. Now, what's the purpose of learning the Noahide laws? To be able to, not only for themselves, good to know for themselves, no question, but it's good that if they know it for themselves, they can train others. They can give over the information to others.
I get
so if
loads
you have
of questions weekly.
Yeah, say again. So giving over that information to Noahides is going to be a tremendous thing, right? They can train people in their own community. So that being said, I would think, that would answer the question for Noahides. Some people have to be able to step up, right? In order not only to get the information, but to want to give it over to others. Now, they would, just as a side point, who's going to do this? Who are the ones that are going to be to do this? So we said you have to have these character traits. You have to strive to be a leader, right? You have to know what you're doing. Or second best is, if there's no one else, you step up. But in this case, who's the one that's going to step up? It's going to be someone who's passionate about what they do, about what they believe in. Who sets up schools? Who sets up yeshivas? Other things are people who believe in it, people who want to perpetuate a certain message, whatever it is, and they give everything 100% that they have in order to do it. They lose sleep, they may lose money, all kinds of things, but they're locked in because there's a need. There's a tremendous need, even if they're not necessarily so qualified. Now, the problem is, if a person's not so qualified, you make mistakes. You might make a lot of mistakes. So even if a person's not so qualified, there's sort of learning on the spot. You have to get guidance. It's clear everybody needs guidance, right? Everybody needs guidance. So you can't do it without that. You could try and think, well, maybe I'll get away with it. Maybe I'll be able to do certain things, and I'll do it by scratch. I'll take it from scratch. So I will tell you, and this could probably enhance what I do as well. But in the end, at the end of the day, when it comes to teaching, obviously there are schools to teach you how to teach, right? Eye contact, classroom control, dynamics, all these different things. I remember I started in teaching in a yeshiva that was right near my house. It's very convenient. And I was giving over something in Jewish philosophy, right? I was giving over something like once a night, twice a week, whatever, in Jewish philosophy. And I would speak to guys afterwards, etc. And a few of the guys came up to me. They said, "Wow," they said, "you must have been teaching for a long time. This stuff is great." Like where'd you learn how to teach? So I said, I have no qualities over here. You guys are my guinea pigs. So yeah, there's still a lot I need to learn. I don't think there's any question. And, God's helped me certainly, along the way. I mean, you might say, well, maybe it's a natural talent, maybe not, whatever, but it can be taught. Person can learn it, but you have to have a certain personality, right? Yeah, and even if you're not qualified, you can get qualified, but you don't go into these fields if you don't like people. All right, I told the bus driver once.
You can't be a misanthropic, right?
I told the bus driver once, it's like kind of crabby to the people that he picks up and this and that. So I said, how could you be a bus driver, be in the front lines, and you hate people? Like, you don't like people. I mean, he likes me, but for most people, he can't stand, right? In general. So like, if you're driving around all day, people, you got kids jumping all over the place, you got adults, this, that, whatever. Like, how can you do that? How can you do that in general? Yeah. You have to have an ideal. You have to be an idealist, right? You absolutely have to be an idealist, right? I just want to mention one thing. Someone here mentions that this motivational speaker was not going to speak in the sanctuary. You're right, right? I don't care. I'm not interested if he would have spoken out of a toilet, right? He would have spoken in the rec room, in the ballroom.
What they stood for,
You don't bring somebody like that in a synagogue to speak. I don't care where he spoke, right? If he would have spoken in the main sanctuary, that would have been worse. I agree. But even if he's speaking in a ballroom. He's speaking outside in a tent, right? On the property. I could care less. He's speaking in a parking lot, right? He's speaking in the parking lot over there. Does that matter? You're right. If he speaks in the sanctuary, that's worse. That's a heck of a lot worse. But if he's not speaking in the sanctuary, it's still bad. It's still wrong. You want to tell me by Dr. Ruth, same thing? She didn't speak in the sanctuary. What do I care?
Yeah, you know what you're going to get, right?
She's going to speak whatever she's going to speak. I don't care where she's speaking. I don't care if she speaks inside of a bathroom. That was my whole point. It doesn't matter where she speaks. If she speaks in the front of the sanctuary, in front of God herself, right? With the ark right behind her, that's a desecration of God's name. That there's nothing to talk about. So you want to say, okay, we'll bring it down 1/2 a level. We'll bring it down 1/2 a level, and she speaks in the recreation room. She speaks in the kitchen, right? She speaks in a ballroom. What do I care? What's the difference? So it's not as bad, I agree. But so what? You don't let her speak in a synagogue. Again, a reform or conservative synagogue, I don't have questions on. But you call yourself an Orthodox synagogue, I don't care if you call yourself modern or not. Why let her speak there? What in the world are you letting her speak there? But you're going to let a missionary speak there? A motivational speaker? He's not going to mention JC? I could care less. Why bring him in?
Yeah. One of these Jewish things speakers? Just doesn't belong there. Yeah.
He doesn't belong there. 100%. Right? Most churches are not going to invite me to come speak. I don't belong in a church. Right? That's the bottom line. It's somewhere, when I was a kid, you'd have these puzzles, and they say, okay, pick the thing that doesn't belong. Right? 3 circles and a triangle. Which one doesn't belong? Right? A triangle, a rectangle, an octagon. Which one doesn't belong? This is not rocket science. This is not fanaticism 101. If you think it is, you shouldn't be listening to me. Right? But this makes absolute perfect sense. He doesn't belong there. I don't care what he's speaking about. He doesn't belong there. Right? So you got to be qualified. But even if someone is not qualified, this would be a novelty over here. Someone has to step up, right? And there are many people. I'll give an example. There's somebody that had a number of children, got sick and died. They died from genetic diseases, right? They were Ashkenazi, certain diseases, didn't have genetic testing, way back when. And this person started a whole revolution in getting people tested, right? For certain diseases, to see if they had a gene, in their system or whatever. And if you had 2 people, right, that's why they do testing before a person gets married, right? If they have, both genes, the male and the female, they shouldn't get married, right? Because the kids are gonna come, they're gonna come out bad, right? But what did this person do? Basically, there used to be a hospital, had a special ward, for these type of things, disappeared. Ward doesn't exist anymore. So you talk somebody like that, because it happened to him, as they would say in the vernacular, it was personal, right? So this person went out, did all the testing, got the best scientists, this, that, and he set out to eradicate this. And he was successful, absolutely successful. Any Jewish male or female that, wants to get married, they get tested, right? They get genetically tested. They take a blood test, run through this test. And when a person, if you're thinking about, dating somebody, they have the numbers. Everyone has a number, right? So if you get a positive thing back, it means neither of them have the gene. If you get a negative thing back, it means you're playing with fire, right? So you take somebody like that. There are many, many cases like this. You take something like that. This person never thought he'd be an advocate for anything. Certainly not something like this. And now this person did a tremendous thing. Tremendous, service for the Jewish people. But you tell me, there was no one else to step up. He stepped up because it affected him, right? It affected him personally. Now, one of the things I'm involved in a lot of different things, right? But this main thing, trying to get off the ground is a retreat center, not only for Jews, Orthodox Jews to come learn, strengthen the place, but also a place underneath the umbrella for the sake of converts, for the sake of people that want to convert, have a proper program here in Israel. At the same time, also for B'nai Noah, for Noahides want to come, see the country, want to learn, right? The whole thing. Again, we'll speak about it at the end, but why am I mentioning it now? Right? Why is this something very close to my heart? As I always say, I love non-Jews except the ones in my family, right? Anyone who's really interested in truth, and, they want help, and, Baalei Tshuva, people who didn't grow up religious like myself, became religious or converts, they want to go through the process, they want to become Jewish. So this is a passion, right? This is a passion that I have, right? I wouldn't be traveling up there twice a week, taking hours and hours of buses if I didn't believe in the cause, right? Obviously. So it's got to be, even if a person doesn't have the requisite knowledge, but they have it in their heart. They believe it so much, even if it's not going to be with any remuneration, right? As Dan, the man over here, is getting paid plenty of money to do this, right? He's going to retire, right? He's going to retire soon, go fishing, maybe buy his own CFL team. Probably not, right? But it's a passion. It's a love to help others, to give what you can give, even if a person doesn't have the requisite knowledge, right? But why are they putting themselves out there? Why are they really doing it? They're doing it because they want to help others, right? Does that make them a bona fide leader? Doesn't make them a bona fide leader, right? Not at all, right? It doesn't matter, right? The point is that they're out there helping because no one else is doing that. So when I started my program for conversion many years ago.
How many years has it been now, Rabbi? You've been
about
doing
13
conversion.
years, more than 13 years. So I sort of took over for someone else. Happened by accident. I'll just tell the story quickly. That someone calls me up on a Sunday. He was giving classes to people in Puerto Rico and in Florida, and he was giving in English. I was translating to Spanish, and he called me up one Sunday, and he says, I can't give this class. Can you speak to them? So I said, about what? He goes, whatever you want. He said, I only speak for 10, 15 minutes, and that's it. So I started to speak. It was right before Rosh Hashanah, and I started to speak a little bit, and about 10, 15 minutes later, I pretty much finished. So the person who was translating...
You in 15 minutes?
I spoke only for 15, I was speaking for 15 minutes, right? That's what he told me, 15, 20 minutes. So I thought, okay, I thought on the top of my head, what can I give over? What will they understand? So I spoke about Rosh Hashanah. Anyway, in the middle of this person says, who's translating, said, wow, everyone's really enjoying it. Can you continue? And I'm like, say what? You only told me 10 minutes. 15 minutes. Most people know I can't speak for that short amount of time, right? But in general, what happened? They said, if you can continue, fine. So an hour and a half later, right? That was my first class for like an hour. It was like an hour and a half, something like that. They said, wow, could you do this next week? And that's pretty much, how it started. And then, I sort of developed the syllabus, spoke to my Rebbe about it, what I'm allowed to teach, what I'm not allowed to teach, et cetera. And that's pretty much, how it got started. But interesting enough, I got to Israel, people were telling me, listen, you got to get on Facebook, you got to get on social media. And for a long time, I hesitated to do it. But then, my wife was looking into learning how to do Facebook ads and other things, and in media, social media and all that. So that's how I got onto Facebook. That's how I started doing all these things, and I started different classes, and that's pretty much how it got started. But the interesting thing is, I'm not a convert. Yeah. I didn't grow up that way. The only non-Jews I had in contact, in general, were people in my family or other non-Jews that I met. But, I never thought this is not my field. Wasn't necessarily my field. My field is really Jewish outreach, in general. But in the end, it's a similar type of thing. What converts, what Baalei Tshuva go through, what returnees to Judaism go through. Very, very similar, even though I didn't grow up as a Christian. And even if there are things I don't know, or I haven't gone through, I have other people probably have, or I have other people I can ask, but it's very, very similar. Family situation, very, very similar. In many ways, so, to me, it fit like an absolute glove. I have a passion, to give over, to Jews, to non-Jews, but, it fit like an absolute glove. That's pretty much how I got into it. And then I had people, asking about Noahides, giving classes for Noahides. So I started doing that also. That's how I sort of got involved. In that, and then I stopped for a while, and then, I got contacted by Noahide Nation. That's how I gave this class. And then, then we met and, et cetera. So
I know that was 80 lessons ago. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. That was like 50 years ago, wasn't it? Feels like it.
Yeah. Well, I've been making sure I've been giving you lots of time on the International Noahide Network, Rabbi.
Oh, but it's great.
I divided Pirkei Avos from chapter 1 to chapter 2. And I got to be honest, chapter 2 is 3 times the length of how long it took you to get us through chapter 1. And I did review a lot of the episodes while I was doing a lot of uploading. It's always nice to catch up and review.
I hope you played me like, 1.5 speed or something. So at least it didn't, at least it didn't go so slow. But I hear people here complaining I speak too fast, but I do. It's one of the things I definitely need to, to work on. But there are 2 things here. Right. And the first explanation here, and I said we were going to finish. I don't know. We'll see. Whether there are 2 aspects here. There are 2 aspects here. One aspect is that a person has to be ready to be a leader, but they have to know what they're doing. Right. The second aspect is even if I don't necessarily know what I'm doing. Right. But I have the desire and I have to step up because no one else is stepping up. Then that's different. But in both cases, you're going to have somebody that's going to coach you, somebody that's going to give you direction, someone you can go to get answers for. Mm-hmm. That's how we get on all these heretics and other people, because they don't have to answer to anybody. And that doesn't make any sense at all.
No.
And that's why we call them out, because this is pretty egregious. They're saying they're doing pretty egregious things that go against the very fiber of what the Torah is. Now, if someone sees, and we see this today, we're living in a generation that's very weak, right? What I would call the Teflon generation, i.e. you got guys go to yeshiva, they don't have such great self-esteem. One little thing can turn them off, etc. So they're made out of Teflon. So I heard a great rabbi say, no, they're not made of Teflon, they're made of tissues. He called it the tissue generation. So maybe I should just call it the tissue generation. But people have very, very low self-esteem. That, and today, with all the craziness that goes on in the world, and the temptations of society, having everything in the palm of your hand and, seeing all the garbage, that's there, it's a temptation, right? Because if we would say, I heard Reb Brevder of blessed memory, one of the Torah giants of the last generation, he would say, if I put in my book, I put in a footnote and I say, look over there. What I said over there, nobody's going to look it up. But if I would say, whatever you do in 10 lifetimes, don't look over there, everybody's going to look, right? Because, they say stolen waters are much more sweeter. Just because the person's married, does that mean, he doesn't have a desire for other women? And he's not going to look at other women, right? So, but we say that what? Stolen waters are the sweetest. If it's something you can't have, the thrill of the chase is great, right? If you're in that situation and that's what you want to do. The thrill of the chase is great, but what happens? So what happens if you actually, you actually catch it, right? Kind of like the cat is running around chasing its tail and it finally grabs it, then what? Cat doesn't know what to do, right? It's kind of shocked. So over here, let's say a person's running after someone, they're married or whatever, they end up getting divorced and now they're together. It's not the same, right? Usually it's not the same. Why? Because before it was stolen waters. Now it's something that, let's say for argument's sake, it's permissible. So if it's permissible, then, there shouldn't be a problem. As I heard of Victor Miller of blessed memory say, how do you kill a great romance? Get married. Why is it that today, what's the divorce rate? 60%, 65%? Anyone who lives together, the divorce rate's like 75, 80%. Now, why should that be? First of all, living with somebody for years and years and years. All of a sudden now they have a piece of paper and makes it legal. Not the same, right? No pun intended. If you can milk the cow for free, right? What's the big deal? There was a famous story you probably remember. I'll just mention this in passing because I have all this useless knowledge. Got to go somewhere. And that is, there's a famous story with the actor William Hurt, right? Broadcast news, I don't remember. Whatever, famous actor was living with a woman in South Carolina, Virginia, somewhere. And he had a couple kids. And he walked out and he left her. And she claimed common law marriage. Now, interesting enough, as a Noahide, that would be. If they live together, it's like they're married, right? So she wanted half his money. So he says, no such thing. You're not getting half my money. We weren't married. But in the States, there are certain states, not all of them, there are certain states that have common law marriage. Now, as far as I remember, in this case, it wasn't common law marriage there, but she got something. She didn't get half, right? No question she didn't get half, right? So I'm just using that as an example. And I'm sure there are many other examples, that you have, let's say with actors, we'll just use them, actors, actresses, they were, did a certain movie, they were married to someone else and they end up falling for someone, who they're acting with, right? It's probably more common than not, regardless, you're put in that situation. Person's put in that situation. So again, that is stolen water. That's something that obviously is forbidden even for non-Jews. So, so if that's the case, what can happen? So now you get the thrill of the chase. Person gives up his spouse, the other person gives up their spouse. Not going to be exactly the same, right? That bought, maybe it will be, right? But in most cases, what's the thrill over here? You might be attracted, it might be lust, it might be all kinds of things. But what's the real attraction of what's going on over here? It's the thrill of the chase, right? That's what it is. And that's why we say that stolen waters are sweeter, because now I can have it and it's permissible. Not as much fun, right? Certainly not as much fun. So in that sense, I can't just do what I want. But we live in a very, that was the point here. We live in a very weak generation. And in that weak generation, or the tissue generation, as we'll call it, person has to strengthen their belief and faith in God. So what should we do? What's our obligation? What's the Jewish obligation? Jewish obligation is to correct those sinners going the right path, i.e., doing outreach. Now, correcting them might be not the right word here, but drawing them closer. So they want to be closer to God, to wanting to do the right thing, etc. Because there's so many people out there, tens, hundreds, thousands, millions of Jews that have thrown their priceless heritage into the garbage for no reason. Right? What Hitler, Yamach Shemoy V'Zichro, may his name be blotted out, what he did against the Jewish people physically, we're doing spiritually. Most Jews don't want to have a connection to Torah. They're not interested in Torah. They could care less. Whether you can prove it or not doesn't really matter. They want to do what they want to do. And they want to have a minimal level of Torah. Okay, maybe they'll eat gefilte fish. Maybe they'll have a Passover Seder. Maybe they'll light Hanukkah candles. That's where it ends. That's exactly where it ends. Maybe they'll be pro-Israel. They'll probably be anti-Israel because most of them are a bunch of leftists anyway. But we're not even going to get into politics. Ben and Jerry, we're not even going to go there. Right? We're not even going to go there. So you got 13.5 million Jews doing it to themselves. Spiritually. And they have no idea what they're giving up. Nothing. They never learned. There are people, I have mentioned this before. I don't want to get too far off topic, which I've already done. And people will say, the next world, I'm not worried about that. I'm good. Like, God forbid there's a next world. There's a spiritual world. I said, well, he seemed pretty convinced, right? Well, what would be the answer to such a person? You say, I see you're pretty convinced. So you must have studied, world philosophy. Studied Socrates, Aristotle? No. Maybe you've studied later philosophers. Kant, Kierkegaard? No. Lahavdil, make a big distinction here. Maybe study Jewish philosophy. Rambam, right? Maimonides, Rabbi Yehuda Halevi wrote the Kuzari. No. Have you read the Bible from cover to cover? No. But I saw the movie. That's great. So I beg to differ. You're not an atheist. You're an idiot. You're not going to say that to someone. But that's the answer. Because they've never learned anything. They can't read Hebrew. And they're totally ignorant. And they're coming along saying, yeah, I'm pretty convinced of this. How are you convinced exactly? You read a Wikipedia article on physics that, say bye-bye to Stephen Hawking, bye-bye to Einstein, Steve, Al, it's been real. Like, I'm going to knock you out because I read an article in Wikipedia. I read all your geological charts, and the whole thing with the ark. I did all that. Come on. Right? So I'm going to knock you out reading a Wikipedia article. Come on. You're gonna say, get real. When I was in camp many years ago, someone said something stupid. We'd say, learn the rules, play the game, practice. You can't make such a statement. You're a fool, right? So over here, what do we say? We're living in a weak generation. So therefore, we said before, even if you have minimal knowledge, people should be out there trying to teach other people, right? Trying to draw them close to their God. Even if there's no one to be in a leadership position, and that person hasn't really learned that much themselves. That's what we said before. They're not a Torah giant. They haven't learned by Torah giants. They don't know the lingo, but they've learned a little bit. Nonetheless, they should strengthen themselves to become that leader. To become that person. Now, what's the reason?
Fill the gap.
So we mentioned the reason is they see the generation as weak. This generation, nothing to talk about. Tremendously weak. And if they're in a place and there's no one greater than them in wisdom, maybe you're going to step on someone's toes. Maybe there's someone who knows more than you. Maybe you should let them do it, right? Let's say they're not around or they're not interested, whatever reason. Then, if that's the case, they should work hard to become the head. That's what they should do, right? They should work. If there's no one else around, then you have to take that baton. You have to take it and run with it because there's no one else to do the job. So that means there could be other people greater in wisdom, but they don't want to be on the head, right? They don't want to be in charge. Why? There are a lot of problems with being in charge. Right? As my Rebbe said many times, if you're a rabbi of a synagogue and they're not driving, and your congregants are not working hard to drive you out, then you're not doing your job right. It doesn't mean you have to hammer them over the head, right? But the bottom line is you got to stand your ground, right? A good book to read is by Rabbi Emanuel Feldman. He should be well. He wrote a book called The Tales Out of a Shul. He told the story how he started the synagogue, which is now run by his son in Atlanta, called Beth Jacob, that he started the synagogue, in the 50s, Rabbi Emanuel Feldman. And he ran into all kinds of problems, right? A lot of different things. A lot of things he brings up. He brings up this book. There was a whole controversy about putting up a mechitza, right? Putting up a separation between men and women. And he almost left town because of it. There are many things he almost left town for, but he held his ground. He absolutely held his ground, and he built an empire there, right? There's an empire, meaning, there are schools there. There are, it's home hospitality. Anyone who wants to come visit the community, they have a committee for that. They help out potential converts. It's a very, very user-friendly type of place. He went down there, and he took the bull by the horns, and obviously probably got a lot of embarrassing moments there as well. But he stood his ground, right? He stood his ground when he had to. That's why I always tell people, you come to my class and you're stuck because I only have to listen to God and my Rebbe, in that order. And sometimes what I say is kind of strong. That's definitely true. But at the end of the day, I don't have my own board of directors. I don't have my own synagogue yet. We're busy working on that, etc. But, in general, why did I take on this thing? This humongous project that, I'm trying to get off the ground, right? Someone mentioned last Thursday night when we had this meeting up there, and that is that, yeah, it's a huge project. My Rebbe would say, if you think small, you end up small. If you think big, you might not end up big, but you won't end up small. There's a need. There's in this community, there are a lot of converts. There are a number of Bali Tshuva, returnees to Judaism, some falling through the cracks. There are other communities that do outreach as well, but they need the community to be strengthened. They're looking for something in this community for the last 15 years. So now there's the yeshiva there, which is very good, and other things that the yeshiva wants to do. I spoke to someone up there the other day, on Thursday night, etc. So it's a humongous project. There's no question. At the same time, it's going to take time to develop. True. But you have to have a vision. You have to have a dream, and then you have to go out and try and, do it. But when I was first there a year and a half ago, right, this is Yavniel, just going to mention it now. Yavniel is about 10 minutes outside of Tiberias, 10, 15 minutes, depending, how fast you drive up the hill or down the hill it's really up the hill from Tiberias. And so a year and a half ago, we had this, we had a whole group meeting. We had people, around the country that, that came, that were interested, etc. And, at the end, we had this plan or, whatever. And what happened? COVID sort of took over. So I was going up there like once a month, for Shabbat, just, people should see my face there, etc. Pretty much everything shut down because of COVID. But one of the main supporters there, in the community said, are you actually going to come up here? Right? It's 2.5 hours from where I live, 2 hours and change. So the question was, are you really going to come up here? So now, we developed a two-pronged thing, right? One, the one bigger plan is actually developing land, having buildings there are people that want to go up there. There's a housing shortage right now. So we're trying to raise money for that and, bring families up there. But we're trying to set up an outreach center. Right now, what's the purpose of the outreach center? The purpose is, to have, married men learning there, doing, teaching in the community, hopefully starting schools there, and doing outreach with other communities. There's also an umbrella underneath that, potential converts that are going to come, be nurtured by a community, go through a proper conversion in Israel, which almost doesn't exist. There's only one program that's more Zionistic that does exist in this country, and have them come see the country, have Noahides come, be like a retreat center, right? have something like that. So doing something like this, you're right. It's a big project. You need a lot of money to get it off the ground. So next few weeks, I'm hoping to have something solid somewhere. We'll see. We'll see where it goes, putting our best foot forward. Right, but there's a second issue that, I would say an easier issue, and that is dealing with the community right now, right? So what does that mean? So that means I'm going to schlep myself, not by car. I'm going to go by bus or whatever, figure out how I'm going to get there, right? A few times a week. I'm going to start meeting people in the community with somebody there, and start giving classes there, at least start injecting them, with a good dose of, spirituality. It could be 1, could be 2, could be 5. Whatever that's gonna take time to build, but at the same time, they're gonna get something right now. Right? So there's a two-pronged thing over here. The bigger project's gonna take longer, no question.
Well, Rabbi,
right? and that project is an absolute humongous project, which is true. Right, yeah. Which is definitely true. But
can I put a plug out? Can people donate at orthodoxconversion.com?
Yes.
So there you go, folks. Orthodoxconversion.com.
There is, on every single page, there's a way to donate, either by PayPal, by credit card, goes to Stripe. So I mentioned that there was there's a bigger project. And if I would think about getting the bigger project off the ground, obviously you need money. You need a lot of money to get this off the ground. So if I think about that, then it's just going to be in the background. Nothing else is going to get done. So I thought, okay, so let's do something practical. Let's do something practical right now. So what's the practical thing? I'm going to start going up there, right? So that's going to give strength to the community, and that eventually, we'll see how that's going to be. We're going to see how that's going to be built. But at the same time, why do I bring all this up now? Right? A, I have a vision. This is something I've always wanted to do. Right? Awesome. And B, I guess, got to go back next week to the Energizer Bunny because I have no idea how this is going to work out. Whatever. It's going to be, it's going to be time consuming. At least I can sleep on buses, which is good. But in general, if you're going to think and you're going to plan, well, that's great. But you also have to implement.
Right.
And you have to do something. Like, someone out there told me that if you're thinking, if the yeshiva or sameach that works with Baalei Tshuva, that works with returnees to Judaism, right? Didn't have a strong Jewish background. So the heads of the yeshiva said if we would have thought about money, we never would have started.
Right.
I mean, money has to come from somewhere, right? It's not just come out of thin air. That 100% is true. At the same time, if I would have thought, okay, we're gonna plan. There's always so much you can plan. So now we got the bigger program. So now we get a smaller program, and now it's going to see how this is going to develop. But how is it going to develop? The only way it's going to develop is if I show my face up there. I meet people, speak to people, and then I make a plan. Okay, go up there Monday and Wednesday, let's say. What am I going to teach? Who's going to be interested? Meet people, see the land, talk to people.
Yeah,
that's what.
We pray Hashem puts wind in his sails. Good mazal.
That's the only way things get done. Right now, someone says, well, someone might say, well, how are you going to do everything? I don't know. Right. I said before, I told someone, one of my big ideas, I cloned myself. I think God's very happy there's one of me in the world. I do have some help, but if you're the one that's going to take the bull by the horns, and you're going to be the one in charge. So
a lot of effort.
You got to put in the time.
Sure.
You're going to have to put in the time and that's what I'm going to have to do. So, but again, it's something very close to my heart. I like the community. I like the people out there. The core people there, very, very strong, willing to do whatever it takes to help. It's a tremendous thing, which is one thing I never had, which is, all the things I've been doing over time has just been by myself, hasn't been with any help. So this is a huge thing, but it's, again, why would I get involved in it? Because it's something close to my heart, right? It's helping, converts up there. Right, it's helping people, God forbid, fall through the cracks, helping their families, hopefully building schools, having non-Jews come to Israel, right? Have them see the country, have them learn, have them be part of it, have them be excited about it, as well as potential converts who actually want to stay, see the country as well, but also are going to learn for a proper conversion that will be recognized. Hopefully, will be recognized by the chief rabbinate, and that whatever it's going to have to be worked on. It's going to have to be worked on as well. So, again, it's not about, and this is what we have to remember. It's not about whether someone has all the knowledge or minimal knowledge. Everybody can do something, right? Most people know me, where I used to live. One of the places I used to live, they know me. Why? Because when I would walk to learn in the morning, in the afternoon, they would see me with headphones. Right? This is before, obviously, MP3s. They would see me with tapes. I still have tapes. Right? I'm still working on, hopefully, one of my last boxes of converting tapes to MP3s. So people say, well, how do you have this knowledge about this or about that, about the other thing? Because I had 1,500 tapes and I listened to all kinds of different topics from different, different perspectives. I've also learned a lot also. So it's not like the knowledge is coming out of nowhere. But, I had all these tapes. People spoke about how do you answer this question, that question. The other things aren't like something I have been involved in. Right. So again, it doesn't matter what level of knowledge, a person has. These are good things to have under our belt, even if we're not going to go out and do it. Just, why did God create the world? What's the purpose of man? I spoke last week, one of my Q&As about the Jewish people being chosen and what that means. I mean, I can tell you from, a whole bunch of different rabbis what they said on the topic, etc. But been listening to these things over the last 30 years. So I'm not going to say it's anything new, that I haven't necessarily heard, but okay. So I come with, more knowledge probably than most people, but I also looked up a lot of these things myself. Why? Because I had the same questions. I had similar questions. I delved into it, and even, we're going to see, that there's a question, what do you answer a heretic? A heretic comes to you and asks you a question. What do you answer them? Some people say stay away from heretics, right? Why are we going to stay away from heretics? Because maybe we don't know the answer. And if we don't know the answer, maybe there isn't an answer. Maybe, maybe they're right, or maybe it's going to weaken us in some way. So what's a simple answer? Someone asks you a question you don't know, and you're not sure, and you can't look it up or whatever. So you say, it's a good question. I'm not the world's greatest scholar. I will look it up, etc. And I will, I'll get back to you. That's not a cop-out. That's just a person saying, I don't have the requisite, I don't have the requisite knowledge. Now, at the same time, there, the question is, okay, how do you answer an abikoros? How do you answer a heretic? It's not talking about a heretic itself. Someone comes to you asking, I don't believe there's God, and I'm an atheist. And we're not talking about the heretic that someone asks you the question, right? It's a theoretical question. In other words, you have to answer the heresy in yourself. Meaning that maybe deep down you have this question. It's not someone else asking the question. Either you have the question, which is, it's a good thing to get answered. I mean, not, every question has necessarily a great answer, but there are answers. If you tell somebody, and this is what schools are afraid of, somebody asks the question, a child asks the question, and the teacher thinks, this is a heretical question. We don't ask heretical questions here. But the child's not asking the question to be a heretic. Child's asking the question because they want to know what the answer is. Now, if they keep hearing from different teachers, we don't ask these type of questions. You're not allowed to ask these type of questions. What is the child going to think? The child's going to think Judaism has no answers. That's what the child's going to think. So now, over the last 20 years or more, schools are actually wising up to the fact that you have kids that have good questions and that they should be able to get an answer. Now, if they're just asking a question, they want to waste time, it's a different issue. But if they're asking a question and it's a legitimate question, either you tell them we have a specific day we can ask these questions, or you give them time. Because if you blow them off, that's what they're going to think. You can say it's not the time for this question. I'll answer it, after class. I'll answer it in a separate class. You have to give them the opportunity to get an answer. Even if they don't like the answer, it doesn't really matter. You have to give them the opportunity to hear it. Because if every single time they're going to hear, there is no answer. Or they get blown off and they're going to think there's no answer, they're done. They're not going to have anything to do. They're not going to have anything to do with Judaism. So a person, especially in this generation, a person has to have a passion, right? People, where do people have a passion? CFL. They have a passion in things that don't matter. We have to have a passion for God. We have to have a passion to want to save the Jewish people, to want to bring as many people back, to educate Noahides. People want to convert. They should get the proper knowledge. They should go to the proper place to get the proper knowledge, right? We can't just stick our heads in the sand. right? So up in Yavneel, got this whole family there.
Yeah, but we can't
You know,
bleed
they've
ourselves
given up
dry
their,
also, right? On the
yeah,
other side.
100%. But, this family up north, they've given up their lives to be out there. One of the sons told me last week, him and his brothers went up there, they didn't have a car. And, you really need a car up there to get around. There are buses, but it's certainly better to have a car. But, they didn't have a car, food, there were stores that didn't sell kosher food. I mean, they had a lot of issues. They had a lot of issues up there. Some of them, went back to where they were living before. They couldn't hack it. They came back. They gave up their lives. They gave up their lives for this place. So they themselves doing whatever it takes in order to build something. But obviously they believe it in their heart. Why? They've gone through it. They've helped others. They want to see other people helped, especially here in the land of Israel. Not only that, it helps build up the community. There are a lot of benefits, right? It certainly helps them. You build schools, helps their families. No question. There are a lot of things, right? There are a lot of things that are certainly going to help. But again, where does the desire come from? The desire over here to be a leader and to step up, even if there's no one else around, is the reason that you have a passion for the project. You have a passion for what it is. Even if it's not even if it's just warning people against certain things that are forbidden, even if they're not going to listen, and no one else is saying anything. And even if you don't have as much wisdom, they'll say, oh, look, this person's saying this person doesn't know very much. Doesn't matter. No one else is standing up. Don't you think if no one else is standing up, God looks down and say, hey, why aren't you complaining over here? Why aren't you saying something? Why aren't you standing up? No one else is standing up. So why don't you stand up and say, but you didn't get, I'm not a vessel to do such a thing. People aren't going to listen. People this, people that. But again, if it's something that's done that goes against what God wants, sometimes you have to stand up. And if there's no one else willing to do it, you have to be willing to do it. And it's not about being the biggest Torah scholar in the world, right? Not only that, but a person may find as well that a person has the ability to do things they never thought they did, in a million years, right? Again, my field is Jewish outreach, right? I never thought I would have got involved in converts in a million years. Not only that, I got most of my family that are non-Jews, not even interested in conversion. So I can help everybody else in the world. I can't help myself, right? So they're not interested in my class. They could care less what I have to say. Okay, right? But the fact that there are so many people out there that need help and that need guidance, and if my background fits to a T, okay, what did my Rebbe tell me many years ago? You wanted to do this many years ago. I would help start a community. He said, you got to, if you don't have any parnasa issues, no issues of livelihood, then he basically said you have to be off your cotton picking head. You got the ability to sit and learn. If you got the ability to sit and learn, don't go out there and be a Mickey Mouse rabbi. That's not what I want. I want you to go out there and I want you to go out like fire. He said, I'll give you a blessing. You go out there, and you go out like fire. Now, he was right. Because now all the knowledge that I have, there's nothing to talk about. Be a lot more successful giving over because, I have much more knowledge. But he didn't tell me when I was looking for a job after the fact, it was going to be much harder to find one because I had a resume yay long, and people were afraid of me. They didn't want anyone to outshine them, helping run their organization. Why not take someone much younger? They don't have to pay as much, and, they can, they don't want to be outshined over here. And I told a number of people, I said, I could care less. Put me in a minor position. Doesn't really matter. Let me help your organization. And it didn't work. He just didn't tell me it was going to be so hard to find a job, even though other people told me that if I would have looked into it further, I would have realized that. But okay, not everything goes according to plan. But now, what I'm trying to set up to do now. There's so many different things, over the last number of years, that I've done that obviously this fits like an absolute T, but now seemingly is the right time, and it wasn't the right time before, or maybe even 10 years ago or 15 years ago.
It's taking root now, yeah.
It's taking root now. Now, I would have thought 20 years ago when I had my own learning place and, helping others and this and that, where I was just sort of starting, in that sense, and that didn't flourish. I mean, it flourished at the beginning, and then money was an issue and everything got shut down. I went to South America and all these different things. And I look back on it now, okay, so maybe that was a good thing, because then I had to go through all these other things in order to be in the position that I'm in now. Because if I was at that point, I never would have thought I'd get involved in converts. Never. I had people that were, FFBs. They were from birth. Maybe they grew up more modern, let's say. And I was inspiring them, giving good classes, this and that. This wouldn't have even been, in the middle or behind my thoughts at all. Nothing. Not getting involved with converts, not getting Noahides. So I'm not saying that's the reason all these different things happen. But seemingly, as we mentioned earlier, how did I get involved in this? Almost by accident. Now, we don't believe anything's by accident, right? There's no question. At the same time, a number of things have happened. Things turned in different ways. And now I'm doing what I'm doing. I wouldn't have thought about that in a million years, right? So imagine 25 years ago, I was sitting and learning, right? Full day. And yeah, even though in the back of my mind, I wanted to start a community, this and that, maybe I could have been ready even at a younger age. God said no, right? My Rebbe said no. Good. So now all these different things happen in order to put me in a position, in a much stronger position.
Right.
Now to be able to do things based on experience, knowledge, and other things.
Well,
right now,
that's got the signature of Hashem on it, I think.
That's what it sounds like. I went through hell before that. Don't get me wrong, right? But now certain, like, of all places, I wouldn't have necessarily thought this place up north. It just happens. Someone I know here where I live.
What's the town?
The town is called Yavniel. It's right near. It's right near Tiberias, about 10 minutes, 15 minutes outside. There happens to be somebody here who lives where in the neighborhood I live in, that has a whole bunch of kids that live up there. So she goes up there, a good part of the, she's half the time here, most of the time up there. And anyway, she's the one that really spearheaded this whole thing, got a hold of my wife, spoke to me, and as they say, sort of the rest is history. But yeah, there are no coincidences. I don't think there's any, I don't think there's any question. Would I have thought it would have been so far from my house? Not necessarily. Not going up there necessarily right now to move there. You never know in the future, but right now that's not going to be.
So that's just above Ashdod?
No, it's further. It's further. It's by Tiberias. It's up by Tiberias. It's half an hour, 45 minutes outside of Sfas. Right, outside of Sfas. So it's before Tiberias.
I see.
It's really after Tiberias, depending where you're coming from. But it's 20 minutes. It's 20 minutes from Tiberias. So you go past Netanya, you go past Kfar Saba, Ranana. You go way past Ashdod. Right, Ashdod is only about, let's say, an hour give or take. From my house. This is 2.5 hours. It's another hour and a half from there. In other words, it takes about an hour and a half, let's say, to get to Netanya. From Netanya, it's another hour. If there's no traffic, it's close to Afua, it's close to whatever. It's close to Tiberias, it's close to Sfas. That's where it is. Up north, there's a lot of land there. For farming. People like animals. Good place to come up there as well. As my wife would say that. You notice that the smell can kind of get to you. You're getting closer because you can smell the animals. As you get closer, my youngest son had a great time up there. Saw a sheep farm. We were gonna go horseback riding, but whatever, it didn't work out. So, anyway, that's the short term, long term plan. And I see we're ending up here. So, I guess you had a question before or something, because I didn't.
Well, no, you were being so inspirational about what it took to step up when nobody else will. And you just brought to light the story of David and Goliath in my mind, the way he was young and stepped up in that circumstance, who is this uncircumcised Philistine? And he stood up to something, because there obviously wasn't a leader acting as such in the face of that adversity. And you were just being inspirational. Thank you.
But the irony of that, just for 1 second, who does David come from? He comes from Ruth, right? Who does Goliath come from? Orpah, right? I'm not going to say how he came from her, it's the whole story. right? But the one who chose to cling to God destroys the one who went away, right? The one who went astray. So you see, even with all that, the repercussions later, in later generations, see, we don't understand at all
No.
what we do in the repercussions. That's for a whole nother discussion. Something that we may do today, like
The ripple effect, yeah.
Ravari Kaplan says in his book Made in Heaven, in his introduction, it's about marriage. So I never got past the introduction because it scared the wits out of me, right? Because he said this just doesn't affect you. This decision affects your wife. It affects your kids. Affects your grandkids. And I shut the door. I shut the book. Why? Because even for me, that was a little bit intense, right? In the sense that who we marry has repercussions. If we marry the wrong person, I spoke about this last week also. If we marry the wrong person, what happens? So, God forbid a person marries a non-Jew. Jew marries a non-Jew, right? We are half of the soul. We have to reconnect that other half. Now imagine we marry the wrong person. So all those kids we were supposed to have, however many, they're not here. So what happens to those souls? That's why you need the matrix, because that's only one person into marriage. Imagine if it's 65% or 70% into marriage and you marry the wrong person. That's why you need a supercomputer. You need the matrix, because God has to figure out all these thousands, millions of souls, what to do with them now and how that works. That's obviously, that's not for now, but that's you can watch. Actually, I did a Q&A last week. I spoke about it. I've spoken about it a number of times, but I spoke about it last week.
It starts to get mind-boggling, sure.
Wow.
So are we done with chapter 2, Mishnah 6?
There are a few other points. There are a few other short points that that need to be made, but we'll have a part 17. But I don't think it's going to be a part 18 unless today I got a little bit off topic, way off topic. But okay, that's what
beautiful stuff.
That's
Rabbi.
what we do here. But it's good. It's definitely good. I'm hoping by next Saturday night, it should also be back. I don't see any problem with that. I hope to have a update, on what's going on, with me going up there, and hopefully,
Excellent.
I'm already hopefully by Wednesday, I've already start learning with a few people, figure out what the topics are going to be and whatever, and, start the ball rolling. So hopefully, I should have some good, I should have some
Rabbi,
good.
We're excited for you.
I should have good information. I hope I don't have good information about how I got lost, took the wrong bus, ended up stranded somewhere. Hopefully that, I'm not gonna have any of those stories, but hopefully we'll have some updates, next week. And if things really start to, develop, then then I'm gonna start advertising other things and, really getting into the nitty gritty of what we're trying to do. But this is, definitely in general. And like I said, starting Monday, gonna start going up there, and we'll see, what's gonna, see what's gonna be.
Exciting. Well, we just pray that you have great mazel tov in this venture, and that just Hashem just go with you. You've been an inspiration to so many. And we just hope that gets refined and like into this program you're working towards. We just hope it all comes together in a way, like I said to you before the show, I'll have to have it on my visit list when I get to Israel, Hashem willing. Next year,
I don't
maybe.
know if Israel's big enough for the both of us. I don't know if Israel can handle the both of us in one place. I also said that to William Hall, so I don't know. If I ever come to Texas, I said, you better make sure the state's ready for me.
Well, I live in Canada, such a big place. There's room for many.
Listen, we could go Yukon territory. Nobody lives there except the Eskimos, right?
So well, there's a few. Yeah, there's a few. Yeah, a lot of miners up that way, and oil patch people. Yeah, polar bears, they eat people.
Okay, so we won't go to Yukon. Maybe we'll go somewhere else. Somewhere a little bit safer.
So Hashem willing, we're tentative. We're on for next week, and you got a little bit more to close this out. And we wish you a great week, Rabbi.
I think next week it'll be the same time. Could be the week after. It'll be now that Shabbos is going out earlier. So it could be in a few weeks. We'll be back to the normal time. We'll see how it.
We'll back it up a half an hour earlier.
We'll see how it develops.
Excellent, excellent. Well, everything's at your discretion, Rabbi. We thank you for sharing the light of Torah from the nation of Israel. This has been Pirkei Avos, the Ethics of the Fathers, with Rabbi Chaim Coffman in Israel. Such a joy. We pray that you're blessed, Rabbi. You can find him and support him on his website, orthodoxconversion.com. If you have any interest, reach out. I'm sure he'd be so kind and will respond in a loving manner. In a Torah manner for sure. So, folks, we'll see you next week. I've got Rabbi Poston coming up with part 32 of the 48 Ways to Wisdom in about 25 minutes. So have a wonderful, wonderful week, folks.